Hello, my absolutely brilliant and beautiful astrology soulmates, and welcome to your weekly horoscope for the week of August 25th. I'm professional astrologer Stormie Grace, and I am thrilled to be here with you where this week is sweet. There's a lot of sweetness that's happening in the air, but it is also about clarity and it is about vision. Now, the star of the show, we've got a lot going on this week, but the star of the show, hands down, this week is Venus. She's moving from those comfy, cozy energies of Cancer into the more fiery vibrations of Leo, which puts her immediately into conversation with Saturn, Uranus, Neptune, Pluto, right? So we're just having the conversation full on out right away. And that's four major aspects we're going to see her have over this, like just a few days. So while Venus is bringing us a sweet week, I do think that that is the vibration of the week. There's a magnetism here, there's a healing, there's a balancing. There is also a question for us to get really honest about what's going on in our values, our finances, and our relationships. It is absolutely time to have that conversation. Now, we're also going to see that Mercury comes out of its post retrograde shadow time, which is a big deal for us because it means, first of all, we can no longer blame Mercury for our delays and confusion. But the fog really does take this next level of clearing, I think. And the stories that we started back in June are really going to start to come full circle. We'll also see that Uranus and Neptune come into a pretty rare sextile happening this week. It only happens a handful of times in our lifetimes, but it's a permission slip to kind of innovate and dream bigger in the new world that we're in. Like, we're literally the world builders and shapers of where we're going to go and where our children are going to go for a very long time in the world that we're building. So that's kind of a cool thing to think about. Now, before we jump in, beautiful friends, if you want to be able to follow me in the astrology all year long, grab the digital transit calendar. It's from our friends at Wise Skies Collective, and you can grab the 2025 version if you're new or you haven't picked up the 2025 energy. And the 2026 version is also ready for you as well, getting ready for those 2026 annual horoscopes. But it tracks every major transit, the eclipses, the void of course periods, the retrogrades, so that you can prepare for those things as the shifts are going to happen. And then you pair that with your own personal chart, because astrology isn't one size fits all. It's just not. So knowing where these transits are hitting for you personally, that's the secret, I think, to really speaking your astrology fluently and seeing them powerfully in your own life. Now, you can grab both of those things in my description box down below, your personal natal chart and the digital transit calendars, and that's going to get us set up for some real success here on the channel. Okay, let's jump in here and talk about what is going on this week. Now, first of all, as we're coming into Monday, our moon day, we're coming in with these resonant vibrations of the moon in Virgo, right? Practical, analytical, very detail driven. This is the moon, it's an earth moon, so we want to be with what we're feeling and we want to be in ways that allow us to feel very useful. That Virgo moon wants to clean the kitchen, sort out the files, finally fix the thing that's been bugging you, whatever that is. It's all about order and function. But I think that on Monday, this Virgo moon, it's bigger than just the Virgo moon, because Mercury, the ruling planet of Virgo, is going to come out of that post retrograde shadow time at 15 degrees of Leo. So please make sure you have your chart and you're grabbing that 15 degrees of Leo so you can see what's the story that's been unfolding for you at that 15 degrees of Leo, because it's been a lot. There has been a lot going on, and you need to see what house this is happening in your particular chart, right? Now, this is an interesting dynamic as well, as we're considering the fact that it's stepping out of its post-retrograde shadow time, because it's a space in the conversation for each of us where we've got to go back to June 30th of 2025 when Mercury entered into that pre-retrograde shadow time. And we've been dealing with revisions. We've been dealing with all kinds of redos, rethinks, second chances on things, right? But the actual retrograde that lasted from July 18th until August 11th, that's where we were doing a bulk of the heat of the work. The real deep revisions likely came up at that time, or the breakdowns that showed us what needed revising came up at that time. And ever since then, Mercury's just been retracing old ground, even though it's been direct, because it hasn't fully been out of the shadow phase. So now finally, Mercury moves forward and it's going to get into new territory, which means a true state of new clarity can return. Right? The story that we've been working on is going to start to have resolution. Now, it will be in September, just September 2nd, that we will see that Mercury actually moves on into Virgo, like fully out of this Mercury Leo territory. But this is a great day here on Monday for clarity. So think back, what were you rethinking? What were you thinking about in communications, contracts, technology? This is Leo, so your own voice in the world, where your heart is at, things like that. Monday gives you a green light to fully move something in that story forward. Now, later in the day, we're going to see that Venus enters into the vibration of Leo. So now we've got this change of energy on the table. We're not in the comfort space of Cancer anymore. Now it's bold, it's radiant, it's a lot more magnetic, but we got to remember Venus is not a hustle hard planet, right? Venus is attracting. I'm attracting in. I'm calling into me. It's how I receive. It's how I structure and I peacock and I decide what are my values. And then I tell the world to bring it right to me, right? I point my hips at it and I call it to me. Now, if you haven't jumped into the Venus Reset program yet to learn how to receive, learn your relationship with your own Venus in your chart, unblock some things, especially in the hips and the sacred pelvic bowl, that are blocking the ability to receive. Like literally, do you know how many people are living with a numb sacred pelvic bowl and this stressed inability to receive? That's what we're unblocking in that program. I invite you to it. Now, Venus is going to immediately come into a trine with Saturn, which is going to help us root down into a lot more beauty, create money and relationships that are a lot more lasting. It's a very stabilizing transit that we're going to experience there. And for many of you, it may look like there's a greater financial opportunity, something that is more steady, has more weight to it, that begins to come your way. I think it's part of a really beautiful piece of the story, but whatever it is, it's going to be moving into some kind of commitment that has more value and it's more steady, sturdy for you. But that's the thing. When we're thinking about Venus this week, I would invite you to think about the journey that Venus is actually going on, right? Venus comes into the vibration of Leo, hits this trine with Saturn, who is also retrograde here in energy in Aries. So while we've got this Venus Leo meeting Saturn in Aries trine and all its stability is there, Saturn's retrograde is giving us this suggestion here that we're actually reviewing responsibilities, obligations, structure, discipline, and how we love, how we love, how we receive finances, how we allow ourselves to be creative. And it makes more space for that Venus and Leo to be that playful, joyful kind of energy, but with Saturn's kind of steady hand. So it's a good energy to remember that on the journey, something is already around you. Venus popped into that 0 degrees of Aries. Maybe it's the new way you would like to show up into the world, and you started to see it as Saturn stepped forward into Aries, and you went, oh, I'm going to need some different boundaries here in a relationship, or I need to have a real conversation about money. I need to have a real conversation about how I receive. I've been being too casual with something in the world, and Saturn here is going to help you take it a little bit more seriously. But the very next day, on the 26th, Venus comes into this sextile with Uranus, who's at 1 degree of Gemini at this point. And it's jolty. This is nice. A sextile is also an easy energy, just like the trine, but we're in a lot more action when we are using a sextile because we're going to not only have the opportunity, but we take action with it. So Venus is going to be more playful here and more jolty with this Uranian energy. It's about fresh ideas. It's about coming at something from a completely unexpected or different perspective, right? In some way. So we've had just the day before Saturn's grounding effect. And today, having new ideas around it can feel like a breath of fresh air, right? A relationship could absolutely surprising things can come up. It can take a really surprising turn. Your finances could open up, new opportunities. There's a lot of creative spark that is available here. But the point is that what you're meeting might be kind of unexpected because it's just a new arrangement of ideas. It's just an innovation. So I would encourage you here as you're traveling under this particular transit to lean into curiosity, lean into it, stay open. Stay open to different people, different opportunities that are going to present themselves because you're more steady. You're seeing a truth about something, right? Saturn gave you that structure just the day before. It's calling in some structure to what you've already said that you're going to want. And now it's like, okay, well, let's make it a little bit exciting in how we're going to bring that structure in. But that's not all. That's not all. Venus then is in a trine to Neptune, who's also retrograde in Aries. Venus is busy this week, which means we're busy this week because just within hours, Venus is going to hit that nice harmony with Neptune right there. Okay, so we've had Uranus spark up new excitement, and now Neptune creates the softening that I think allows us to accept it into our experience. It's more romantic, it's a little bit more dreamy. Neptune can be a little bit more ethereal of an energy, but really, with Neptune retrograde here in Aries, having popped forward and you were seeing a new vision or a new ideal for yourself, as Neptune is retrograde here, it softens us to see where we've had illusions around something, where we maybe had a past dream of the way we wanted something to go. And whether it is true or not, and it's the right thing to move forward with, Venus gives us a sense of beauty and compassion around what it is that we're seeing, right? You know, sometimes this can look like you're falling back in love with something or with someone. There's been forgiveness or healing that has come in, and you're seeing a situation through a greater lens. There's a lot more softness that's coming to it, right? Or maybe there was a financial decision that you made in some way, and you're seeing that you need to have compassion with yourself in order to come to the other side. I will say that here on Tuesday, Wednesday, if you did need to make some really big financial or money decision, I would just check all the T's and the I's, make sure everything's dotted and crossed because it is still Neptunian energy, so it can blur the lines a little bit. Okay, so just be thinking about that. Now, as we're coming around the corner to the 27th, we're going to see that Venus is now also in this opposition with Pluto, who's retrograde. So we've got Venus like giving us a value check. Now, we had the sweetness of Neptune just the day before, and that shifts kind of dramatically when we get to the Plutonian energy because Pluto is going to bring us into the transformation of shadow work or the things that are more vulnerable, right? Where we have power struggles, where we have obsessions, where we have control dynamics, intense desires, which are not good or bad. They are simply intense, but they can resurface for us this week around relationships, around finance, around value. And with Pluto retrograde in Aquarius, we've also been working in our collective systems, right? So whether it's been at a more personal level, the friends, our communities, and things like that, or more macro levels, tech, societal stories, and expectations, those things, as this opposition is playing out, challenge Venus's desire for just personal joy and sovereignty in Leo. I just want to be the best me, but it's like I'm pulling against some societal ideas and they might be a bit painful. But again, Venus is here to bring a little bit of sweet. So I wouldn't be surprised if in this couple of days, certainly under the Pluto motion, if something in a relationship doesn't come to a head, in some way someone realizes they're giving away too much power, whether it's to a partner or to a boss, or we're on social media looking for validation instead of information, right? These kinds of things. Or has there been some kind of financial entanglement? Something's been hidden and it's coming to light. It's a pretty powerful moment under this Pluto energy to see some kind of pattern that needs to be released, but also to celebrate where you've come to the other side of an old pattern where you're like, yeah, I'm not living in debt anymore. I mastered my money, or things like that. Okay. But the thing I wanted to bring our attention to this week is that it's almost to me like Venus in Leo is having this 3 day initiation as we're here in the week, but it's the journey as we're thinking about it personally to where we first find stability coming in contact with Saturn. And it's stability towards the vision of ourselves that we want to be, but we're seeing where we have some cleanup to do. But then, in order to have that and become that next version, we need to innovate, which is that Uranian conversation. And then we get the softness and the inspiration and willingness to hold a new ideal in that Neptunian container. But in order to do all of this, we also have to face the power of the truth. And that comes with that vibration of Pluto. So, this sequence that we're seeing, I'm curious how it plays out for you this week and what your experience is. That journey of joy, structure, freedom, ideals, and the shadow. Because whatever comes from it, these are the moments that are redefining how you love, what you value, and most importantly, I think, how you receive. Now, I had a client this week, and with permission, I get to share this experience with you, but I thought it was really, really profound. So the situation was, coming into a session with this beautiful human being, and she's coming in tears and saying, my husband booked me this massage, and I should feel really happy, but instead I feel resentful and really angry, right? And remember, Saturn, Neptune, Pluto, they're in retrograde. So they're revealing things that have already begun to come up as these planets shifted into these new energies. And if you remember me talking about this, I've been going on about it all year, that as these planets shift into the masculine signs, feminine energy or the receptive pieces of us are going to kick on, and they kind of get put into their place to actually start receiving, but having to tell the truth where we've also not been able to receive or we're struggling with it, right? So it was interesting because as we saw Saturn move into Aries, Neptune move into Aries, and Uranus move into Gemini, a conversation this client and I had previously is that she's kind of getting tired doing a lot of things in the house, keeping up with everybody's everything. And she had been doing that for years. And as these planets made a move, she realized that the dynamic that was happening in her home, she set up by never asking for help. She just flat out never said, I need some help. So this brings the conversation to the table in her marriage. And her husband says, okay, cool, I can do that. Followed by surprising her with this gift card for a spa day, going, wow, I'm seeing how exhausted you are. And on the surface, right, what a kind gesture. But for her, in learning the receptivity piece, very Venusian, when she tried to accept it, she described it as she was frozen, right? Like she just froze and could not let him pour into her, right? Like, and then the guilt for spending the money on herself and all of this, right? It was amazing to hear her explain this, the shame, because deep down she didn't believe that she deserved it. And furthermore, what came up was that she didn't want to go to the spa and receive that because of this Plutonian power dynamic, this belief, right? Like, what if I actually have to trust this human being? What if it's not me doing everything? Everything will obviously fall apart, right? And coming down to see that she just really did not honestly trust her husband, which stemmed back to some abandonment stuff that came up for her. But seeing how the conversation was already up in the planetary story on her behalf, thinking about that going into this week, if you've got things like this in your life where you can think back to the story, what came up as these planets switched into these signs, especially this week about receiving, seeing that Uranus and Gemini brought a conversation to her of, I need help because Saturn and Neptune and Aries, I don't want to continue on like this. Aries, don't want to continue on like this, but what do I need? I need to innovate in order to get there. She says something to her husband. He responds with a surprising gesture. Neptune gives her a bit of softening to her heart and an inspiration to move towards this next version of yourself, right? But that Pluto cracked her open with the question of, why can I not let this man give to me? Wow. This is powerful stuff when we see how it's lighting up in our astrology. So, this week, if you resonate with that, in whichever way you resonate in the stories of your own receptivity, we're looking at Venus's journey here in practicing receiving. Not just what are you receiving, right? But what are the messages that also come up for you around being worthy of care, right? And if it's painful, it's simply exposing something that's probably been living quite a lot of time there and you've been believing it, but the innovation is available this week to not buy that story anymore or to at least jump in and investigate it. That is, I don't know, it just touched my heart. It touched my heart to see the way that the astrology plays out and we can use it. Okay. Now, as we're getting on over here into Thursday, we've got the Uranus and Neptune sextile. Now, like I said, this aspect it's rare. We're not going to all see it a lot of times in our lifetime. It's just not the thing. However, what it does do is Uranus being that planet of change is going to bring that innovation into this space as well. So there's an awakening that's happening. It's an awakening to language, awakening to how we think, awakening to how we perceive things. And then in that sextile with Neptune, who is retrograde, we are reawakening a vision for ourselves, for our world, for our children, for the opportunity to take the energy, walk through the doorway of the insight that's being provided. If we're willing to take the action and walk through it, of course, right? It's going to be a big thing to see if we're willing to walk through with those particular energies. Now, together, they kind of create this marriage of innovation meets inspiration. And it doesn't pass in a day. This energy doesn't just happen and then it's over. This is going to linger and it's also going to repeat into 2027. So we are at the beginning of what this can look like and what we're forming and shaping. So expect and invite and lean into the curiosity as we're heading Thursday throughout the weekend for breakthroughs. There are going to be breakdowns that lead to breakthroughs, but more so breakthroughs, especially breakthroughs at collective levels, breakthroughs spiritually. What else do we learn is out there and around us? What are we going to learn about spirituality and technology and how they bridge gaps together? This will be amazing. I can't wait to see all of the art that is going to come out of this particular revolution as well. Now, personally, I think one of the things that we can lean into looking at as we experience this transit is where it feels like your intuition and your intellect are like coming into alignment, right? The longest journey is from the head to the heart. It really is. To get these two in alignment can be really, really long. So where are you having this experience? I shared a client story with you where we saw where there's space for that journey to be made for sure. But for you in your life, where have you had a dream or a vision in your life for years? And as we're coming through the weekend, you're starting to see more of the practicalities of how to make that thing happen, or the pictures becoming like a little bit more clear, or is maybe grainy for like weeks, or maybe you're seeing the honesty of needing to connect with a different kind of community that's going to get you into the place where you can bring your vision to life, right? Now, what I would suggest and just bring your attention to as well is like, if you can, don't just float. Don't just float here, right? Don't let the dream float away. Don't let it be a passive vision. If you see something signaling up in your intuition, whether it's going to be a dream or you're going to, learn down the road that that was a vision or you have a deja vu, right? Trust what's being shown on the path right now and anchor it with some kind of action. That's going to be a better way, I think, to really lean into that energy throughout the weekend. Now, we're also going to see that as we move into Friday and through the weekend, that the moon is going to shift into the vibration of Sagittarius as well. So now, we've had a lot going. We've had a lot on midweek, and we're practicing a lot of skills. We're making decisions around our relationships and our finances. And as the moon shifts here into Sagittarius, it's a bit more optimistic, it's a bit more open-minded, it's a bit more adventurous and curious, right? And it's, of course, going to come into opposition with Uranus over there in Gemini. But all in all, I still think that this is a great day for learning, teaching, traveling, some kind of expansion, but you may be stuck in your words a little bit. You're like, I want to teach this, but I don't want to say the wrong thing, right? It's a good day here, especially on Friday and through the weekend, to breathe, be very Sagittarian, laugh, look forward. Again, there's a big picture to what's coming up here. So allow it to be something that you move through with a little bit more joy, a little bit more widened perspective and curiosity. Now, as we get to Saturday, I'm absolutely here for the vibration of Saturday because it's a nice check-in for us as well. We're going to see that we've now got the first quarter moon happening at 8 degrees of Sagittarius. So this tells us it's time for action. We're checking in for action. We actually call the first quarter time the crisis of action point in the lunar cycle. What do I do is the question here, right? It's also a time where resistance, whether it's obstacles that pop up in your path, it's other people providing resistance, it's your own resistance to taking action, they all start to show up for you to overcome them. I share every time we talk about first quarter energy that at this point in the cycle, people, places, things, and old ideas can be falling out of your life so fast that your eyelashes are blown back. And it's because when we look back in the lunar family story, when we go to December 1st of 2024, we had the new moon that was happening at 9 degrees of Sagittarius. At that time, you were planting your seeds of intention to begin something new, right? What area, what house of the chart is this happening in for you? Where is that Sagittarian area? Go back to that 9 degrees because you planted seeds of intention. And now, as the universe is here at this first quarter time, the new journey you started or the choice that you made at that time of what you were calling in, the universe is like, okay, are you really going to do it? Are you going to step into this? Are you going to step over that obstacle? What are you going to do? Are you going to go forward or are you going to retreat from it? Right? So you're actually in action on what you called in. I love it. But Sagittarius is a fire energy and it asks us to move with courage. But some of the courage of Sagittarian energy is to remember, right? Our archer has the bow. And in order to get that bow to go as far as it wants, the archer has to pull the bow back first, right? He has to pull it back so that it can fly. So here, as you're in your action this week, think about this. Where is what we've heard about Venus, what we've heard about what's coming up in relationships, what we've heard about going softer and receiving? Where does that maybe feel like a step back to you? But actually, that is you getting that arm, getting that arrow so freaking ready to fly, right? That you pull it back, let the things fall away, let the ego fall away, so that as that arrow gets let go of and it flies, that's you overcoming the obstacles and moving towards what you asked for at that new moon. Now, as we come forward and we get to May 31st of 2026, we're going to have the full moon, and this is going to happen at 9 degrees of Sagittarius. So we're going to check in then and see what you built. So jot it down in your digital transit calendar, put it down in your own Google Docs, however you're keeping up with your calendar, because I want you to see the sacredness of what you're building and what you have the courage to step back and let go of and fight for what you want, right? Now, at the end of the cycle, February 28th of 2027 will be in the last quarter time, and we're going to bring this to closure and to completion and see what did you build that expanded your life, that took you to the next level, that left you with a brand new philosophy of how you're going to live and move and have your being based on your astrology. All right, Sunday, as we're going to close this week out, we've got Mercury in a trine. Now remember, Mercury's Mercury's not in any kind of retrograde energy anymore. Mercury is free. Okay, so Mercury is going to be in a trine to Chiron, who's over in Aries, who is not particularly free right now, but that's fine. So as we close this week, it's healing through talk therapy. Let those words come up. Let it come out. What are you talking about? Chiron over here in Aries, that previous identity, the previous vision and version of you that was wounded, right? My identity would be wounded if in my client's example, if she let her husband take care of her, who would she be if she had to trust him and receive from him, right? And in your own life and in your own story, where do you see this? And the dialogue that comes with having the courage to dialogue, to tell the truth, to talk about where you've been and where you are now. I like a Mercury Chiron trine because it's a great time to listen to other people as well, so that we have the opportunity to see where we want to go and be supported. And it also allows us in the Chiron placement to shed our terminal uniqueness. I'm the only one who doesn't trust my husband. I'm the only one who's struggling learning astrology. I'm the only one who, and instead we go out, you can go to YouTube, we can go into our local communities and say, here's the truth of where I've been struggling, and hear from someone who's at the other side. Or maybe you're the person who's on the other side. Maybe you're a substacker and you're writing healing into the world, right? It's an aspect that gives voice to the wounds that have maybe felt too painful before, but now they have some relief. Instead, it's an opportunity to speak into the world the healing that has happened for you. And by uplifting someone else or sharing that story is literally going to be what sets you free. It's a very transformative aspect. I like it. Now, sometimes what happens too, I've had a couple of these happen where Mercury comes into a trine or a sextile, depending on what it is. One of the easier aspects with Chiron, and someone will apologize to me, right? Or they'll tell me something that they've been like afraid to say. And it's not because I've made them afraid to say it. It's something that they needed to say within themselves. And then they say it and it's like no big deal, right? It's no big deal. So I'll be curious to see what happens for you under these aspects this week. So that is our week. Clarity from Mercury, blessings and lessons from Venus, vision from Uranus, Neptune, Pluto, Saturn. And don't forget, grab your digital transit calendar from our friends at Wise Guys Collective so you can track all of these transits, follow along with me, see them in advance, and be prepared. And definitely make sure you have your own natal chart. All right, beautiful friends, I love you a ton. I can't wait to see you next week, and check out these videos at the end for where you can go next for more astrological information. Bye, everyone.